Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first time in 2025 we've had this man in studio, and I will say he's carved out a bit of time on a very, very important day. He's just opened up a new clinic, FrontRunner Performance, in Osborne Park now. You taking over the world, or what's happening, Steve Gravina?
Oh, step by step, mate. Step by step.
Welcome. That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, no, a new physio clinic in Osborne Park, which we just outgrew our space in Wembley, so off to a second place now.
So still in Wembley?
Still got a little clinic in Wembley.
I feel like you're triangulating my house, like Wembley, Aussie Park. I'm in Mount Hawthorn. You just need one Mount Lawley, and then I can just go to all three.
Yeah, well, you can start to come to one first, mate.
I genuinely need your services. I can't walk.
This guy's been walking around like Uncle Fester for about 3 weeks.
That's just the way I look as well, my face.
If you could just keep going north, because you go to Osborne Park, so I'm very north of the river. If you could go up like Warwick and then maybe Wanneroo, we're in those areas.
Okay, I think the next one might be south, mate, close to my house. So Aussie Park might be your go.
There you go. I'll come there.
What people certainly grew to know you for last year, mate, giving you some good insights and information around injuries and not necessarily the breaking news stuff, but like why that happened, what's going on, and where we are in the season right now. Just coming off the back end of January, start of Feb, there's been lots of injury news, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to get you in and have a bit of a chat.
Yeah, it's always the time of the year. There's a few trends that tend to occur right now. So happy to have a chat about it.
Let's start West Coast and Fremantle. I think that's valid. I kind of want to start at West Coast. Is that all right?
Sure, go for it. Let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks as well with Anthony Davis and his injuries too. So we'll go through everything.
Look, West Coast hasn't been overly smooth sailing. We've seen some unfortunate ones. Dom Sheed highlighting those with an ACL. Elliot Yeo in what's sounding like a tackle in training, a knee and a syndesmosis. Those two guys. Your thoughts? Maybe some intel as to what they look like from a recovery point of view.
Yeah, it's a real shame. I mean, they're the heart and soul of that group. The veteran athletes tend to be really high at risk this time of the year. As we know, the trend of injuries at sort of the peak of preseason training loads tends to be the most prevalent right now. So, I think from Yoe's side of things, ankle surgery for a syndesmosis, which is typically, it's about a 3-month rehab. So obviously the first half of the year lines through that.
I won't put you in a position here, but I will say, not Steve Gravina, me. The club's come out and said, look, first few rounds of the season, that's not happening, and I'm not a medical professional. And that's terrible news for Elliot Yeo, but I would just love to see more honesty when we see medical reports. Anyway, please continue, Steve.
I have been out of it for a little while, but from my understanding, the advancement in surgical techniques hasn't changed that much. There's the recovery from the injury perspective, but then there's the reconditioning, and we know with Yoe's soft tissue history, you just need to be really careful with the way he comes back in. So to get him up and going for the second half of the year, I certainly wouldn't be rushing the first part.
I think Hamish Brayshaw last week said that Liam Ryan had a similar injury a season or two ago, and he was using emu oil, his auntie's emu oil, and came back very quickly.
Do you know about this? Do you know about the emu oil that Liam Ryan?
Can we get Yoey on the emu oil?
I'm sure Yoey could try the emu oil.
Yep.
Yeah. There's been all sorts of different things come in and out over the years in footy clubs, and look, if it's all above board, then you're fully supportive of each athlete trying to assist their own recovery. I'm not sure there's a lot of evidence behind it all, but if it makes you feel a little bit better and it helps you
made Dan
get on the track a bit earlier,
then
go for it.
Dan feel better. It's interesting you say about someone like Yoey, and again, not probably talking about him specifically, but there's the injury and the surgery recovery, but then there's the ongoing risk of soft tissue off the back of deconditioning. Like that's something that medical teams look at probably even more than just the injury, right? The post.
Yeah. So it's the ramp up in intensity in training and trying to get him back up to match ready status without the benefit of a preseason training load. So by the time Yoey gets back into training, all the preseason match sim is gone. all the extended match play and training is pretty much gone.
You say gone, what does that mean?
So right now, the players will be going through, every week a pretty extended match simulation training session, generally on a weekend, to try to replicate what a game's going to be like. So you're gradually exposing them from the start of preseason through to the first preseason game into a level of intensity, a level of volume, the contact that you'll experience, all of those things to prepare them for a game. Once games start, then the boys are just so fatigued from the actual games that once you get to training, it's really hard to replicate that kind of intensity. And not that you probably need to, it's more recovery focus and then working on your game plan. So then for Yowie, who's in the middle of a rehab block, trying to replicate what he needs in a mini pre-season, it's just really difficult. So the rehab group will have to try to conjure up some match-specific drills, and they'll probably throw in some staff and bring in some top-up players and try and get Yowie match fit. Whether they turn to the waffle and bring him in through that when the time's right. But that's why the jump in intensity is so high when they get to games, because it's so hard to replicate that in training. And it's similar to right now, where guys are, at the height of their pre-season, where it's been a bit of a rapid build from Christmas to come back up, because they know the game's around the corner. And so that's why we see such a high spike in injuries right now.
I was going to ask that. We see a lot around this period, end of Jan, start of Feb, injuries. We got, we've had the ACL and that sort of stuff over here in the West, but you're seeing hammy tendons and central tendons and Achilles and, more soft tissues going. So is that because we're at the peak of pre-season, or is pre-season potentially too short now?
Yeah, well, it's a lot shorter than it used to be. And so, these senior players are coming back after, at least a 10-week break from the end of the season. So the time that they've got as a group to ramp up to this kind of intensity is so much shorter. And so then the risk is that much higher.
Well, they're just trying to jam-pack so much in a short amount of time.
Well, yeah, you know what your point B is. Your point B is a game. So you're coming in at point A. Now, you can try to prepare a guy in the off-season on his own or in a small, training group to try to get to that point. But with so much less time than we used to have, you've got to run the gauntlet of ramping up really quickly. If you, especially the teams that have had success and, finished top 4 in the prelims and the grand final, they've got a really narrow window. They're coming back mid-December.
Why can't players just do it themselves?
Well, they can, but it's just so hard to replicate the intensity on their own.
Right. What's the difference between someone who can come back and not get injured and be at that good point compared to people that just tend to get injured a lot?
Yeah, so heaps of different factors. So previous history of injury is the number one predictor of injury. So guys that have had a major injury along the way, then if that's a knee joint or an ankle joint or a big hamstring, that tissue is no longer as robust and strong as it used to be. So you're already at risk. Then age comes into it. So the young and the old are the highest risk. And then the training age of the athlete. How many pre-seasons, how many seasons have you got through unscathed? The more you can sort of bank, then the more robust and bulletproof you can be. So the guys that tend to get through have always got through. And the guys that don't are the ones that keep breaking down.
So if we're talking about breaking down, and I don't want to flip into down the road at Fremantle on that note, given I'm in purple, Sean Darcy has been on everyone's lips in terms of injury land. It seems to be that he's had a great pre-season. He's come back fit. We've seen photos. We've seen, he's looking very good, Sean Darcy, right? But out of nowhere, in their break towards the back end of Jan, he's off to Doha.
Not a transfer.
1, what's he doing over there? 2, would that have been planned? And 3, now he's been booked in for small-time ankle surgery. How are those all aligned?
From what I understand, Sean went over to Doha to see one of the latest, rehab gurus. His name's Enda King, who's an Irish guy that works at a sports medicine facility in Doha. It's become, a popular thing to do, to send your high-profile players overseas to see these specialists. I think it's a number of sort of layers to that. So these guys are the top of the tree in the rehab world. So you get a fresh set of eyes on them to give them, some perspective on what's going on. And from what I understand, Sean was going okay, but looking for an extra edge in his performance in rehab. 2, taking someone out of their of where they live in their normal routine and put them in somewhere for a week or 2 weeks of dedicated one-on-one rehab. It's an intensive block where you can get a lot more out of it. No distractions. Assuming he hasn't got many mates in Doha, so like it's all work over there. 3, you get to feel a little bit special that you're going to see the guru, and the club are right behind you, and they're willing to invest that for you. And probably 4, a club decision and almost a marketing decision to go, well, we're doing everything possible for this guy. I don't know much about this injury. It sounds like there's a little infection in the metalwork of an ankle, which wasn't really related to the reason we went across. So whether that's unlucky or dodgy water in Doha.
Well, like the saying I always heard as a player was like, no surgery is good surgery. Like that there's no surgery that's like, oh, that's a good result. You'd much rather not be having surgery.
Yeah, if he's had major metal work put into an ankle over the journey, there may have been a plan to take the metal out at some point. But yeah, I'm not sure if this was planned or this has come out of the blue.
This is going to sound like a dumb question, but what is it about the doctors in Doha? It's always Germany and Doha and stuff. Like, surely there's only a certain amount of ways you can do surgery on someone, like reconnect a thing or clean out something. Like, what are they doing over there that's so special that you got to go to these obscure places?
Yeah, so this is a rehab specialist. So he was doing exercise for 2 weeks.
Right, okay.
And more reconditioning, building his fitness, building his strength. Same guy that a few of the West Coast boys went to. So Yowie and Gov went to last year.
And speaking of them, they spoke highly of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And then, a Freo strength conditioning coach goes with Sean and learns over there as a PD exercise. So he brings back then the systems that they're employing and then can start to impact and influence the program back at the club. So I know West Coast have been heavily influenced by the work that they did and they learned across there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Last one I'll ask you about was Brisbane. So I think they had 4 ACLs last year, early. So Kitty Coleman was definitely one of them. Tom Duday was another. There's a few other boys.
Ashcroft came back from one?
Yeah. So ACL recovery, looking at Dom Sheedy, who's got that ahead of him. What's that going to be like for Brisbane, having 4 or 5 guys coming back into the group from those? Is that high alert for the medical team and rehab team?
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess the benefit for Brisbane is that they happened early in the year. So you'd hope most of those guys would have done most of the pre-season. So, your first 6 months is pretty light on, but then you can integrate into the group. So they should have had, a full pre-season and really good match exposure leading in. So they should be better prepared than someone like, Dom, if they're looking at any, possibility of bringing him back by the end of the year. As we talked about with Yowie, without that, pre-season and match exposure, it'd be super high risk. The Brizzy guys will have to be smart, like bringing 4 in round 1, it'd be, pretty high risk. So I'd imagine they'll be staggered, and they may all be at different phases of their rehab anyway. But yeah, it's always a little bit of a hold your breath moment. You can prepare the guys as much as you think you can, but then once you put them out there, it's a challenge. And then on the other side, it tends to be a bit of a 2-year injury. So the first year you get back and play. Generally, the second year you're back to your best.
Right.
So they'll be, recognising that and making sure that they're coming back, at the right time with the right coverage around them.
Very good.
I've got a selfish one.
Yeah.
So Anthony Davis, 31-year-old, was just traded for Luka Doncic. And Anthony Davis is a very injury-prone NBA player.
Dan's a big Mavericks fan.
First game for the Mavs, huge first quarter, like 40 points, whatever. He then left the game with a non-contact injury, which I'm just reading here is a left abductor strain. So he went to go block a shot.
Or adductor?
Adductor, sorry. A left adductor strain. He went to go block a shot, but didn't even jump, and then held his groin, and then didn't come back on the court. Multiple weeks, maybe inevitable. What does that even mean? Adductor strain, multiple weeks.
Just write Dallas off for us, will you?
Yeah. So fun fact, I watched him in his rookie year in New Orleans.
Oh,
back
right.
in the day,
the
2013. Brow. Yeah, we did bow to the brow.
Yep.
Anthony, he'll have a few weeks on the sidelines by the sound of that. So adductor strain, your groin muscle.
Yes.
So from your pelvis down towards your knee. So it's the change direction muscle, pivoting left and right. Those bigger guys with long levers, when they injure a muscle like that, which controls that stability, tends to be a little while before they're match fit again. I would imagine
Perfect.
you're looking at 4 to 6.
So, Dan,
Weeks.
if you want something closer to home, I did my adductor on the indoor soccer pitch.
Oh,
And
right, when you couldn't walk.
Couldn't walk or move. And I had to go on standing goals, and I couldn't go left or right.
That's right.
And it was
okay.
my adductor that snapped in half.
Okay.
It was a 6-weeker.
All right.
Mate, that is all we've got
Perfect.
time for. But I just, as we've been talking, I've actually worked on some marketing things for FrontRunner Performance. So I think you've got to work in somewhere. If you can't afford to go to Doha to get your rehab done, maybe just come down to FrontRunner
Aussie
Performance right here in WA. What do you think about that?
Great call. So we are, opening today. Really exciting. Big team of physios now. We've got 7 physios down there.
Is that right?
We run some rehab classes, looking after everyone's health, fitness and performance needs.
Don't have to be an elite athlete to
Not
go down
at
there, I'm
all.
assuming.
No, kids, seniors, parents,
Plebs.
Schofield,
Parents-
top operators,
parents with sore backs.
used up hacks. Oh, welcome.
Osborne Park and Wembley, FrontRunner Physio. I need to get that right.
Well done,
There
mate. We really appreciate you coming in, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a big 2025.
Thanks very much.